This is the evolution of PlayStation consoles, from the system that made CD-based gaming the industry standard to the generation that marks the beginning of the end for physical media. The PlayStation story began in 1988, following a partnership between Sony and Nintendo to develop a CD-ROM system for the Super Nintendo console. The project, known as the Super Disc, was designed to provide significantly more storage space than traditional game cartridges. However, the partnership between the two companies ultimately fell apart, and Sony decided to continue developing the concept on its own, transforming it into what would eventually become the very first PlayStation console. As a result, the original PlayStation launched in Japan in 1994, followed by the United States and Europe 1 year later. While its main competitors, such as the Nintendo 64, continued to rely on cartridge-based games, PlayStation helped popularize CD-based gaming and played a major role in establishing it as the new industry standard. Although CDs had longer loading times than cartridges, they offered one major advantage: storage capacity. A single CD could hold approximately 650 to 700 megabytes of data, while the largest Nintendo 64 cartridges could store only 64 megabytes. This difference allowed developers to create larger games with higher quality soundtracks, more voice dialogue, and pre-rendered cinematic cutscenes. From a hardware perspective, the PlayStation featured a 32-bit RISC processor, alongside a graphics system specifically designed for real-time polygon rendering. This played a major role in the gaming industry's transition from primarily 2D games to fully 3D worlds and characters. The PlayStation did not include internal storage, meaning game saves required external memory cards with a capacity of just 128 kilobytes. The console originally shipped with a standard controller that featured neither analog sticks nor vibration feedback. In 1997, Sony introduced the first DualShock controller, adding 2 analog sticks and dual vibration motors, providing far more precise control in 3D games and creating a much more immersive gaming experience. Among the most iconic games released for the original PlayStation were the Wipeout series, Final Fantasy VII, the Tekken franchise, Gran Turismo 1 and Gran Turismo 2, Metal Gear Solid, Ape Escape, Spyro the Dragon, and Crash Bandicoot. Success came quickly. The original PlayStation family sold more than 102 million units worldwide, becoming the first video game console in history to surpass the milestone of 100 million units sold. In 2000, Sony introduced the PS1, a redesigned version of the original PlayStation. It was significantly smaller and lighter while retaining the same hardware specifications and full compatibility with the existing game library. An optional 5-inch LCD screen could be attached directly to the console, allowing it to be used as a portable gaming system. The PS1 quickly became a success, selling more than 28 million units worldwide. In 2000, Sony launched the PlayStation 2, which would become the best-selling console in the history of the industry, with more than 160 million units sold worldwide. Its main competitors were the Sega Dreamcast, the Nintendo GameCube, and Microsoft's first Xbox. The PlayStation 2 featured a completely redesigned look and significantly more powerful hardware. It was powered by the Emotion Engine processor paired with 32 megabytes of system memory and 4 megabytes of video memory. Users could also add an optional 40 gigabyte internal hard drive. One of the biggest changes was the transition from CDs to DVDs. DVDs offered much greater storage capacity, allowing developers to create larger and more ambitious games. At the same time, the PlayStation 2 could also play DVD movies, making it the first DVD player in many households, especially since, in the early 2000s, a standalone DVD player often cost nearly as much as the console itself. The console also introduced 2 USB ports. However, game saves were still stored on external memory cards, now offering a larger capacity compared to the original PlayStation's memory cards. The PlayStation 2 shipped with the DualShock 2 controller. It retained the design of its predecessor but featured an all-black finish and introduced pressure-sensitive face buttons. Another major advantage that contributed to the console's success was its backward compatibility with most original PlayStation games. As a result, the PlayStation 2 built one of the largest game libraries ever created, with more than 3,800 titles released. The console also helped define a new era of 3D sandbox action games with titles such as Grand Theft Auto 3, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, God of War, Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, Final Fantasy X, Kingdom Hearts, Gran Turismo 3, Gran Turismo 4, and many more. Sony also released a network adapter that allowed players to connect the console to the internet. This made it possible to play online games such as Final Fantasy XI, SOCOM, and Resident Evil Outbreak. In 2004, Sony introduced the PlayStation 2 Slim, a much smaller, lighter, and quieter version of the console. The redesigned model featured a built-in Ethernet port, eliminating the need for the external network adapter. In 2006, Sony launched the PlayStation 3, its most ambitious and also its most expensive console to date. One of the biggest innovations was the introduction of the Blu-ray disc drive, making the PlayStation 3 the first game console to use the format. Blu-ray discs offered significantly more storage capacity than DVDs. The PlayStation 3 was also the first Sony console with built-in Wi-Fi, eliminating the need for a separate adapter to connect to the internet. At the same time, Sony introduced the PlayStation Network, its online platform that allowed players to enjoy multiplayer gaming, purchase digital games through the PlayStation Store, download updates, and manage their PlayStation accounts. In 2008, Sony added the Trophy system, and in 2010, it launched PlayStation Plus, a subscription service offering monthly free games, exclusive discounts, and additional member benefits. Inside, the PlayStation 3 was powered by the Cell Broadband Engine processor, one of the most advanced processors of its time. Although the hardware looked incredibly powerful on paper, the Cell processor's architecture was notoriously difficult to develop for. As a result, many early multi-platform games performed better on the Xbox 360, and it took developers several years to fully unlock the console's potential. The console shipped with the DualShock 3, the first wireless PlayStation controller to combine vibration feedback with motion sensing technology, which had previously been introduced with the 6-axis controller. Throughout its lifecycle, the PlayStation 3 received some of the most celebrated games in PlayStation history, including The Last of Us, Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3, Gran Turismo 5, God of War 3, Little Big Planet, Demon's Souls, and Grand Theft Auto 5, one of the last and most technically impressive games ever released for the console. In 2009, Sony released the PlayStation 3 Slim, a smaller, lighter, and quieter version of the original model. It featured a completely redesigned look, a matte finish instead of the glossy exterior, lower power consumption, and a 320GB hard drive. 3 years later, Sony introduced the PlayStation 3 Super Slim. It was even smaller and lighter, with one of its most noticeable changes being the replacement of the slot-loading disc drive with a manually operated sliding disc cover. By the end of its life cycle, the PlayStation 3 had sold more than 87 million units worldwide. In 2013, Sony launched the PlayStation 4, the console that would bring PlayStation back to the top of the gaming industry. To date, the PS4 has sold more than 117 million units worldwide, making it one of the best-selling video game consoles of all time. Under the hood, the PlayStation 4 was powered by an 8-core AMD Jaguar processor, an AMD Radeon graphics processor, and 8GB of GDDR5 memory, one of the biggest improvements over the previous generation. Unlike the PlayStation 3, which used the complex Cell processor architecture, the PS4 was built on the x86 architecture, similar to modern PCs. This made the console much easier to develop for, allowing game studios to take full advantage of the hardware much more quickly. Compared to the Xbox One, the PlayStation 4 featured a more powerful graphics processor, faster system memory, and launched at a price $100 lower, advantages that played a major role in the console's success. The PlayStation 4 generation was also defined by one of Sony's strongest exclusive game lineups. Some of its biggest titles included The Last of Us Remastered, The Last of Us Part 2, Uncharted 4, Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Marvel's Spider-Man, Gran Turismo Sport, Bloodborne, Ghost of Tsushima, and Days Gone. One of the console's biggest drawbacks, however, was the lack of backward compatibility. Unlike the Xbox One, which supported many Xbox 360 games, the PlayStation 4 could only play games developed specifically for its own generation. Sony also introduced the DualShock 4 controller. While it kept the familiar design of previous PlayStation controllers, it added several new features, including a touchpad, a light bar, a built-in speaker, a 3.5mm headphone jack, and the share button, which allowed players to capture and instantly share screenshots and gameplay clips directly from the console. In 2016, Sony released the PlayStation 4 Slim. Alongside its thinner design and rounded edges, the console introduced support for 5 GHz Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.0, and USB 3.1 ports. Later that same year, Sony also launched the PlayStation 4 Pro, the first major mid-generation hardware upgrade in PlayStation history. The PS4 Pro featured a significantly more powerful graphics processor, higher CPU clock speeds, support for 4K gaming, and high dynamic range. In 2020, Sony launched the PlayStation 5, one of the most anticipated consoles in the company's history. At launch, the PlayStation 5 was available in 2 versions, Standard and Digital Edition. The Standard model includes a Blu-ray drive, while the Digital Edition model has the same hardware specifications but completely eliminates the optical drive and relies exclusively on digitally downloaded games. To date, the PlayStation 5 family has shipped more than 93 million units worldwide. the PlayStation 5 introduced a completely new design, featuring a white and black color scheme, curved panels, and blue accent lighting. Under the hood, the PS5 is powered by an 8-core AMD Zen 2 processor, a custom graphics processor based on the AMD RDNA 2 architecture, and 825 GB of storage. However, the biggest leap over previous generations is its custom SSD, capable of transfer speeds of up to 5.5 GB per second. The console supports resolutions of up to 4K at 120 Hz, hardware-accelerated ray tracing, and Tempest 3D audio. Another major innovation is the DualSense controller, widely regarded as one of the biggest advancements in PlayStation controller history. Alongside a more ergonomic design, it introduced haptic feedback, capable of simulating different textures and far more detailed vibrations, as well as adaptive triggers, which can dynamically change their resistance depending on in-game actions. Another major advantage of the PlayStation 5 is its backward compatibility with PlayStation 4 games, many of which benefit from faster loading times and improved performance through the Game Boost feature. Some of the biggest games released for this generation include Demon's Souls Remake, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Horizon Forbidden West, Gran Turismo 7, God of War Ragnarok, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Final Fantasy 16, Astro Bot, as well as major third-party titles such as Resident Evil Village and Assassin's Creed Valhalla. In 2023, Sony introduced the PlayStation 5 Slim, available in both Standard Edition and Digital Edition models. They deliver the exact same performance as the original PlayStation 5, but are approximately 30% smaller and lighter, while increasing the built-in storage to 1 TB. One of the biggest changes is the detachable disc drive. The PlayStation 5 Slim Digital Edition can later be upgraded into a disc model by purchasing Sony's official external Ultra HD Blu-ray disc drive. In 2024, Sony launched the PlayStation 5 Pro, the most powerful PlayStation console ever created. It retains the same 8-core AMD Zen 2 processor, but features a significantly more powerful graphics processor, improved ray tracing, and introduces PSSR, an artificial intelligence-powered upscaling technology that reconstructs images at higher resolutions. Unlike the other PlayStation 5 models, the PS5 Pro is sold without a disc drive, although Sony's official Ultra HD Blu-ray drive can be purchased separately and attached later. This could be the direction future PlayStation consoles are heading, with Sony announcing that new PlayStation games will no longer be released on physical discs. Starting in 2028, it's possible that the PlayStation 6 will become the company's first all-digital console, with the optical disc drive remaining only as an optional accessory for backward compatibility. However, Sony has not officially confirmed these plans. Which PlayStation console is your favorite, and what would you like to see Sony bring to the PlayStation 6? If you enjoyed this kind of video, make sure to subscribe to our channel, and if you give us a like and leave a comment, it really helps us out. Thank you!